Hey everyone, Warwick's here. So we're back with another class guide video, spec guide video rather. So today we're going to be doing Blood DK, the long promised Blood DK video. I'm sorry it took so long. Go watch my weekly vaults video. It explains a little more why this has taken a little bit longer. But Blood DK, this expansion, I think has been one of the more solid tanks all expansion. It saw a little bit of a drop off in 9.1 because of concerns about its overall damage, but Blood DK still remains one of the best defensive tanks in the game, has been pretty much all expansion, and for a majority of tank main players, they find it to be the most fun tank that they play. I definitely see why that's the case. Blood DK is my second favorite tank overall, behind Brewmaster Monk, of course. So you just have a lot of control over your HP in a way that most other tanks don't, and you feel like you have a tool for almost any situation going in. With the introduction of Tier back into the game in patch 9.2, Blood DK has seen a meteoric rise in a situation that it hasn't really been meta in a long time in Mythic Plus, while also still being one of the best raid tanks in the game. So today we're going to talk about everything that you need to get started with your Blood DK, or if you're coming back to the spec in 9.2 and 9.2.5, as that's coming here hopefully within the next few weeks. This hopefully will help you kind of find your groove, get you started so that you can get right into the deep end with Blood DK. So let's start with your talent build. So the talent build for Blood DK is going to vary a little bit depending on whether or not you have your 2 and 4 piece bonuses. So we're going to talk about a little bit of variation in the builds that can go because of that. Now, if you do not have your 2-piece bonus and you are doing single target raid fights, a fight like the Jailer or a fight like Ragallon where you don't really do much ad swapping of any kind, then you want to use Blood Drinker. Blood Drinker is just a quick little ability that drains health from your target over, approximately 3 seconds, I think is the base. And then you also can still, move, parry, dodge, and use defensive abilities while you're channeling it. So it's basically like just an on-demand heal every 30 seconds that, gives you about 7,000 health back on top of all the other healing that you're going to do with Blood DK. Again, this only works on one single target, so it is the best for single target situations only. If you don't have your tier sets bonuses yet and you are doing Mythic Plus type situations, Heartbreaker will be your best option. Heart Strike generating a 2 additional runic power per target hit. Now remember, Heart Strike does hit naturally one other target, so it has 2 target cleave naturally. If you're inside Death and Decay, then that spreads out to I think 6 targets total, 6 or 8 targets. Let's see, does Death and Decay tell us? Oh, hit up to 3 additional targets, so 5 targets. So you get 5 targets, so that's 10 runic power for every Heart Strike that you hit inside Death and Decay. Roughly 4 of those, and all of a sudden you are sitting at enough RP for a Death Strike. Once you get your 4-piece bonus, which does a lot with with Dancing Rune Weapon, Tombstone becomes a viable choice. You basically consume 5 Bone Shield charges to gain, up to basically 30 runic power and an absorb shield equal to 6% of your maximum health for 8 seconds. My Blood DK has a pretty good health pool. As you can see, mine's only around 253 eye level and it has almost 6-digit health, whereas my Monk, who is at 275 item level, is just over 100,000 health. So you can see there's a 22 eye level difference, and my DK is nearly the same amount of health as my Monk does baseline with no fort buff, anything of that nature. Because you can generate a lot of Bone Shield charges very quickly because of Dancing Rune Weapon and the amount of uptime that it's going to have, playing this talent, basically popping it on cooldown, is going to be a great way to give you a more absorb, which is going to be more healing showing up on your healing meters, which means that you can make your healers very mad that, they don't get to heal the tank, which some healers like that because they're like, hey, I can heal this idiot brain DPS. But some healers are like, I'd like to tank heal every now and then, and you just don't do that. On the 25 row, Rapid Decomposition does have some play with Death and Decay and some play in Night Fae. It's pretty niche. Getting more leech on your blood, more health leech on your Blood Plague is fine. It's not super noticeable, and it just kind of falls to me behind Hemostasis, which has been the go-to talent in this row for God knows how long at this point. Basically, when you hit Blood Boil, you gain damage and healing done by your next Death Strike, stacking up to 5 times, so you're getting 40% more damage and 40% more healing on Death Strike. Very good in AoE situations where you can quickly get the 5 stacks, because it is for, again, each enemy hit. So you pull 5 enemies, you Blood Plague once, you got a full Hemostasis stack, and then whatever target you're trying to funnel down single target is going to get hit hard with your next Death Strike, and it's going to heal you for even more than it already does. So just a very good, stable, solid talent. Consumption really hasn't seen any play. for a while. There are some people that have some theories about consumption that it could work, but I don't see any reason that it works. It's kind of like another melee ability on a short cooldown that does heal you. It does do like a conal attack, so it can be good for helping with snap threat, but that's what Blood Boil's for, and Hemostasis just overall provides more damage and more healing. On the 30 row, Relish in Blood was used for a while, and you can still definitely use this talent when Crimson Scourge, which is the proc that resets your Death and Decay, makes you so that your Death and Decay heals you per bone charge that you have, and you gain 10 runic power. So that's just another way to gain some runic power, get a little bit of healing depending on your bone shield charges that you have. So some synergies there. As you get higher into tier sets, and even with as you just get higher in gear level, Blood Tap starts to become even better. Basically, you get on-demand rune regeneration by getting a free rune just for using Blood Tap, and then whenever you get a bone shield charge consumed, you get reduction on this cooldown. Now, this does have synergies with Tombstone, I think, because when you consume your bone shield charges and when you consume bone shield charges, so the wording is very similar. So you can Blood Tap into a Tombstone to get 10 seconds off your Blood Tap, take it from a minute to 50 seconds. So very nice there. On the 35 row, Will Another Acropolis is generally the safest one. Basically, you get 30% DR under 30% health. Just really strong, really stable. Anti-Magic Barrier does have some duration where if you need more AMZs or AMSs, and increasing the absorb amount. So you'll see this a lot in PvP if you're a menace and play Blood PvP. Mark of Blood, not very good. I wouldn't really use it. Again, probably more useful in PvP, where you can mark an ally that's getting beat on, and then they also get a little bit of healing for 15 seconds. But Will Another Acropolis, again, just a very stable, steady talent, with Anti-Magic Barrier having some potential niche use. On the 40 row, all three of these are good. Grip of the Dead, generally the best in Mythic Plus, outside of very specific weeks like Sanguine. Getting a big, massive slow is always a good thing. It allows you to be able to kite on weeks that you need to kite, such as necrotic weeks, maybe even some raging, or as of this week on recording, bolstering. Allow you to get away from some mobs a little bit easier so that bolstering stacks can reset. Allow you to have an easier time getting that heal off, or allowing your healer to catch up, so that you don't put your group in imminent danger. Tightening Grasp is really good in raid situations if there's a fight that has a lot of adds. So think of Anduin, for example, where you want to get all those adds rounded up as fast as possible. So Tightening Grasp really good, and also very good on weeks like Sanguine, where you don't want the slow. But this allows you to kind of pull mobs in a lot faster. So if you have a caster that's just standing in a Sanguine pool and your normal death grip is down, you can Gorfian's Grasp the melee mob that's not in there, and it should pull, if you're in the range, it should pull the caster mob out of the Sanguine. So just kind of makes things a little bit easier in that direction. Wraithwalk is if you feel like you don't need either of the other utility for any reason. This just gives you more mobility. Death Knight, generally one of the slower classes in the game, so having anything that helps mobility is never a bad idea. On the 45 row, Voraciousness has some potential in single target situations, giving you Leech, and even more Death Strike healing. So again, between that and Hemostasis, you're just getting huge heals off your Death Strike. But typically speaking, Bloodworms is going to be, generally speaking, a more stable option, and the best one for AoE situations. Basically, it's the Bloodworms. You see them around your feet. You can walk on them and burst, or let them expire after 15 seconds, or drop below 50% health, and then they basically will immediately burst and heal you. So again, another source of good self-passive healing. You don't really have to do anything with it. It's based off your auto attacks, which increases the value of haste. More white hits mean more Bloodworms, things like that. Death Pact, not really good. Not as good as the Warlock Death Pact. So we don't really use this at all. On the 50 row, again, all three talents have value. Purgatory is used in really high keys, and you've seen it used a lot in the MDI settings. Basically, it's cheat death. We take those. If your tank can cheat death, you want that as much as possible on progression rating. As you get into content that you feel really comfortable in, so if you're very comfortable doing a weekly 15, for example, then this talent starts to lose a lot of value when you're not really going to probably proc it all that much. It's very good for safety. It saves your ass with no skill involved at all, which is, you know, for newer tanks, that's probably really, really nice. But for those of you that are experienced with Blood DK or are, you know, looking to get good with Blood DK, eventually you will find yourself not really needing this talent all that often, maybe outside of progress rating or brand new content in Mythic Plus, like your highest keys that you've ever done, and it's kind of like your first time going into a 15 or an 18 or a 20, whatever the case may be. Red Thirst gives you Vampiric Blood cooldown reduction. Vampiric Blood is your big main cooldown that you want to use. Embrace your Undeath, increasing your maximum health by 30% and increasing all healing and absorbs received by 35%. So it's just a health and healing intake button. You can pretty much use it on cooldown. With Red Thirst, you have it a lot more often, so you're able to get a big health boost and a big healing boost. That does impact your own Death Strike as well. Just a really good solid talent. If you don't use Purgatory, Red Thirst becomes like your best option for single target situations. And even in Mythic Plus, you can use it. Like all three of these talents are you know, these first two talents are both good in single target and AoE situations. Bone Storm, the last one on the talent row, is pretty much only useful in AoE situations, and you're even seeing some DKs abandon it as you get into the highest levels of keys. But for most people that are running, you know, anywhere between you know, 5s and 15s, Bone Storm is going to be perfectly fine. Basically, it's a DPS cooldown that allows you to deal some shadow damage out every second, and you heal for 3% of your maximum health every time it deals damage, up to 15%. So you use this on 5 targets. You get 15% of your health back every time it ticks. And then it lasts 1 second per runic power spent. So you want to build this up to 100 runic power at minimum. And then pop it, gives you the longest duration on that. And it deals reduced damage beyond 8 targets. So it's full damage on 8 targets. Reduced beyond that, but it does help with your AoE threat push in a big pool where you're trying to keep all the mobs grouped up as best as possible. So a lot of really good talents. Blood DK is in a really good place talent-wise. It's one of the few specs in current WoW that has, I think, a really good talent tree, good variety of builds depending on your situation. So just overall, pretty strong. Let's talk about the tier set. Since I've mentioned that, it will change based off of your bonuses that you have. So Gauntlets of the First Eidolon, the 2-piece bonus. When your Dancing Rune weapon is active, Heartstrike extends the duration of a Dancing Rune weapon by half a second and increases your strength by 1 second, which persists for 10 seconds after Dancing Rune weapon ends. The one thing that's not listed on this is that it does have a max strength cap stats. I think it's 30, which is one of the big reasons why Blood DK was so powerful in big Mythic Plus pools, because it was uncapped. So they were getting like 100+% strength bonuses and were able to just basically become unkillable, because strength also increases your parry chance and Dancing Rune weapon gives you your parry chance. So you're just basically parrying like a lot of the damage that was incoming. And so it made it so that like a Holy Priest healer or a Resto Shaman could just pump even more damage with spot healing DPS. So it just became a little bit too powerful, and Blizzard put a cap on the stacks, which is fine. It doesn't break the set in any way. It still keeps Blood DK strong, but it definitely brings them down much more in line with other tanks like the Prot Paladin and the Brewmaster Monk. Blood DK is still probably the best overall for Mythic Plus situations if you're looking to min-max and be like the best meta pick. But Vengeance DH, Prot Warrior, Prot Paladin, yes, Prot Warrior, I said that. We'll talk about that later at another video, I think, or on stream. But basically anything but Guardian Druid is actually feeling really good in Mythic Plus right now, according to a lot of people. Guardian Druid, unfortunately, their tier set got nerfed in a way that just irreparably harmed the spec, and they haven't really done anything to compensate the spec for it. But Blood DK, probably still the strongest in Mythic Plus and one of the strongest in Raid. Moving on to the 4-set bonus. When you take damage, you have a chance equal to 100% of your parry chance to lash out, heart striking your attacker. Dancing Rune weapon also now summons 2 rune weapons. So instead of getting 6 bone shield charges, you're now getting 9 bone shield charges. On top of the fact that you're legendary, which we'll talk about in just a second, does give you 5 bone shield charges. As you can see, you're getting a ton of bone shield charges up, which is what makes Tombstone so effective as a talent when you have your 4-piece bonus. This tier bonus is absolutely fantastic. It's making Blood DKs do more damage than some DPS, even in some cases. You have really strong single target damage with the 4-piece bonus, really helping you out there, giving you a bunch of heart strikes. And you have great AoE bonus when you're inside your Death and Decay or Death's Due if you're Night Fae. So it's just a really, really strong offensive tank with all the defensive bonuses that come with Blood DK. This tier piece is absolutely fantastic. Go get it as fast as you can, even if you have to LFR and take 239 pieces, because it's going to be worth dropping from like a 260, I think is the number. Someone that calculated that you can drop from like a 270 piece down to a 239 LFR piece if you're activating a set bonus, and it is actually a DPS increase. That's just how much the set bonus is worth. So let's talk about legendaries. So legendaries for Blood DK basically have been really narrowed down into Crimson Rune Weapon. So again, Dancing Rune Weapon generates 5 Bone Shield charges. You get a cooldown reduction on Dancing Rune Weapon, and then when you actually lose your Dancing Rune Weapon buff, you gain 40% rune regeneration for 10 seconds. So you get that, again, that rune regeneration that Blood DK generally lacks outside of Blood Tap. You get on pull Bone Shield charges, so you can go in, pop a Dancing Rune Weapon on pull, and you get 5 Bone Shield charges, which makes you a lot tankier on pull. And then also getting a cooldown reduction on Dancing Rune Weapon. So again, you can see the synergies with your 4-piece bonus, where if you can summon more Dancing Rune Weapons, that's 3 weapons basically that are striking with Heart Strike. You can see just all sorts of synergies just starting to form, with Dancing Rune Weapon becoming probably the most potent offensive cooldown in the game, in my opinion. Maybe not with like Summon Infernal because of what it does for Destrolock right now, but I think definitely from a tank perspective, it's the best offensive cooldown, and it's also one of the best defensive cooldowns to go with it. So it's just one of the best cooldowns in the game. In the past, you could run things like Super Strain, which gave you basically all the diseases. That was the best play for the first 2 patches of this expansion. But with the synergies of the tier set pushing into Crimson Rune Weapon, there's just no choice at this point. You're basically forced into getting this. This does come out of Halls of Atonement from Halkias, so you can go farm it if you need to. It's pretty easy to farm. It's just the first boss of Halls, so not hard to get. For Unity, when you're looking at your Lego legendary ones, there's some good choices here actually. We'll kind of get deeper into the covenants here in just a second, but I want to talk about these while we're here. Basically, Death's Due gives you a strength bonus when you heart strike enemies. Rapid Transference makes it a bigger one, and your runic power generation's even more, so you have more HP to do off of the Death Strike off of. Abomination's Frenzy for Necrolords basically gives a bomb limb a higher duration, increasing the Bone Shield frequency that you get, so you save your runes from Marrow Rend into Heart Strike, so that's always useful. And the first time an enemy is damaged by a bomb limb, they take 20% increased damage from you for 12 seconds. Again, really strong overall here. You take, doing more damage means more threat, means more likely to, less likely to have threat ripped from you. Just a really strong overall one. Insatiable Hunger, I think, is probably one of the weakest. Swarming Mist overall is a pretty good ability, generates a ton of runic power for you, but then you also get extra damage after Swarming Mist is done, and extra healing on top of that. And then the damage is increased by 2% for every runic power spent while Swarming Mist was active. So something you'll see commonly done is people will Swarming Mist, get up to 100 runic power, and then Bone Storm. So that's basically 200% runic power. 200% extra damage being done to Insatiable Hunger makes Swarming Mist post cooldown window damage period very strong, making it a really good sustained option. So again, it's not a bad choice. I think it's probably weaker than the other ones. Final Sentence, the Kyrian one. Shackle the Unworthy is applied to an enemy, you instantly gain a rune. So again, that on-demand rune generation, and you get your damage increased by 4%, stacking up to 20% for 15 seconds. So again, really leaning into the offensive side. So covenants. What are the best covenants for Blood DK? So Blood DK is actually really interesting, and we'll go ahead and pull up the Soulbind calculators because I want to look at these abilities mainly. Blood DK is in a really, really interesting position because it's one of the few specs in the game that can run all 4 covenants, and it's fine. I would say overall, let's start with the weakest. I think it's Venthyr. Swarming Mist basically increases your dodge by 10%, so good value in that. And then every time it deals damage, you gain 3 runic power, up to a maximum 15 runic power per damage tick. So basically you can go from an empty runic power bar, or 10 runic power bar, because it does cost a rune, and a little bit of RP it looks like as well. Basically you spend a rune and you're going to go from basically 0 RP to essentially a max bar, because you're getting 8 seconds and it deals damage every second, 15 RP times 8 seconds. Like, you're maxing out your RP bar. The dodge is negligible. You don't really notice it all that much, but you know, it is a small defensive boost. This is if you find yourself not having great RP generation, like if you're really mismanaging your runes in a way and you're mismanaging your runic power, this is a good way to kind of help cover that gap in I guess, your skill. But it's a fine ability. It's not the best. If you need a Venthyr in Halls or Sanguine Depths, for example, you can easily fill that role, and it's not a bad idea. And you get Door of Shadows, which allows you to have a little bit of burst mobility on a short cast time. And there's some stuff inside the Soulbind trees that allow it to be a little bit more of an effective cooldown. Beyond that, Night Fae, Necrolord, and Kyrian are all pretty good for different reasons. So Night Fae, I've ran Night Fae a lot as Blood. I think I still pretty much will run Night Fae as Blood. Basically, this replaces Death and Decay. It does proc and reset off of Crimson Scourge, just like Death and Decay does. Basically, you do more damage inside of the, it's slightly bit more damage than Death and Decay over 10 seconds to targets within the area. And for Blood, basically what happens is when you heart strike enemies inside the thing, you get a strength bonus, and they deal reduced damage to you as well. So you get 8% DR essentially against those targets, plus 8% strength. It's a very effective cooldown. You can have this buff up a lot, and with Rampant Transference making it 3% strength, not the DR, but just the strength, you go from, say you have 5 enemies in there, you go from a 8% strength bonus to I think it's a 12% strength bonus, so pretty solid percentage gain in strength. Just a really good ability. And then Soul Shape is great mobility, so it covers the gap in Death Knight mobility. You can Soul Shape through, get some things done, allow you to blink forward as well. One of the best mobility abilities in the game, period, for almost every spec, except these high movement classes like DH, Monk, Warrior. Those classes that have really good mobility already, they don't make a ton of use out of Soul Shape. Druids to a lesser extent, but everyone else, you make use out of Soul Shape. You find a way to do it. For Necrolord, you get Abomination's Limb, which is what I'm playing right now, just because I've been messing around with Unholy DK. Basically, it's slappy hands. You sprout additional limbs out of your body, you deal shadow damage, you grip them in, you gain 3 Bone Shield charges instantly, and then you do it again every 6 seconds. So you get, a total of 9 Bone Shield charges for the duration of Abomination's Limb. Again, that can save you from 2 or 3 potential Marrow Rends that you have to do during a pull, which that's, anywhere between 6 to 8 runes saved. So just a really efficient way to help with your Abomination Shield charges. It's a little less of a thing I would focus on rather than just the damage itself. But it is something to keep in mind that you are going to get Bone Shield charges off of using Abomination's Limb. So keep an eye on your Bone Shield charges and make sure that you're not forcing a Marrow Rend when you don't need to. And then Fleshcraft, just a strong defensive, good absorb, stuff within the Marrowlith Soulbind tree, adds some really good offensive capabilities to it as well. Just very, very good. And then for Kyrian, Shackle the Unworthy, basically they deal reduced damage to you by 8%. You deal arcane damage to them over 14 seconds. And then when you have that active on an enemy, your direct damage attacks and spend runes will spread Shackle the Unworthy to nearby enemies. So good single target implementation with the damage reduction, and also good AoE. You hit a target and then immediately Death and Decay Heart Strike, and Shackle the Unworthy is now on all of those targets, and all of them are doing 8% reduced damage to you, plus the benefits that you're getting from the Execution Sentence Legendary. So as you can tell, all of these for Blood DK are very, very strong. You can legitimately pick any one of them. You can be the flex character in your Mythic Plus group, where you want to use different covenants depending on what your group needs, or if you just have one that you really like, you can definitely use it. Back to Kyrian real quick. Summon Steward, we know about Summon Steward. Clears necrotic stacks, clears bleeds, things that Blood DK it doesn't have a total issue with, but anything that helps your effectiveness is never a bad thing. So let's talk about Soulbinds. So we'll stick with Kyrian here, and Forge Light Prime Mechanicos is your best option with Brawn and the Effusive Anima Accelerator, giving you Shackle the Unworthy up quite a bit more. Generally speaking, you want to go with this path. Going down the tree, Soul Glow Spectrometer into the defensive, and then so you want to go generally with this path here. You can switch up, some of these are optional, like this one you can go either direction. This one you can do Soul Steel Clamps if you want to get that third potency conduit, but basically in Mythic Plus situations, this is just going to be the best thing. Getting extra, you know, getting a potential 15% haste on a spec that absolutely loves its some haste, it's just too good to pass up. So this is the path I'd take before Forge Light Prime Mechanicos. He's really the only one for Blood Decay that's got any sort of value. The mastery bonuses from Pelagos are okay, but not great. Crit bonuses from Clea are okay, but not great. So not a lot going for the other two ones, so you just want to use good old Swole Boy. For Necrolord, it's Plague Deviser Marilith. Volatile Solvent basically allows you to get bonuses off of flesh crafting enemies, and then you would go down to your potency path. Again, here you can pick either one that you want to do. I always, like to do anything that makes durability on your armor better, because the less you pay in repair bills, the better. Again, here you can kind of pick whatever. We'll just go with that. And then Ultimate Form gives you another health regen. So on a thing like, for example, Jailer, when you have to line of sight him, you can quickly flesh craft and get some health back. And then if you do the full channel, you get another health regeneration on top of that. Unless you're immediately not tanking Jailer after the line of sight mechanic, I would probably cut off your fleshcraft channel. If you're not the tank that's going to be grabbing him, say your co-tank is going to be grabbing him right off, then I'd probably take the time to full channel, get that health regeneration, and just make yourself a little bit more potent. And here at the bottom, you can do either of these. Viscous Trail doesn't have a ton of value in PvE situations. Undulating Maneuvers tends to be better. It's a weaker form of Stagger, which is never a bad thing. And then, of course, Kevin. Anytime you use Abomination's Limb, you get Kevin. He does a lot of damage for you, and you do 6% more damage to your target, and you give allies an Absorb Shield based off your versatility, so not bad. Emanate does have some play with lead by example, getting the primary stat bonuses, but just kind of falls behind at the lower end of the tree to Plague Deviser Marilith, who's the best one for Necrolord for really all three specs. Spoilers. For Night Fae, any of these actually can work. So let me double check. I think I've used Nia before, and I've used Dreamweaver, and I kind of found them both to be kind of the same. So I think you can really choose either one. Most places are going to recommend Nia. You get, and I think it's mainly for the stamina bonus here in Grove Invigoration. So again, you go down this path here, you pick whatever you want on this row, and then here you can choose depending on what content you're doing. You go Poison for Mythic Plus, you go Burst for Raid. So we're just going to go down the middle because I'm generally a Mythic Pluser. Grab that third potency conduit. And then you get Survivor's Rally into the Finesse, and Bonded Hearts basically also gives them, is another health boost. So a lot of health synergies here. Along with Vampiric Blood, you can just get a crazy level health pool that's really strong. Dreamweaver can work, but Pod Tender does cause problems in Mythic Plus in particular, and in raid situations. It's good to get the haste boost when you use Death's Due, but you have to be very careful about it. It can be okay, but generally speaking, Nia is just a little bit of a safer pick. And then for Venthyr, typically you want to go Nagia because you can get the haste from Thrill Seeker, but even Theotar with Soothing Shade and combination of It's Always Tea Time giving you a damage reduction and basically a 1% healing buff while you're standing inside the Soothing Shade is another good sustain option, plus Party Favors giving you potentially haste or burst or strength. All three of those you really like. Crit, you'd rather not get crit, but if you get it, it's okay. So this is fine. And then Draven actually has some good effective health pool stuff. So basically, when you're below 40% health, along with Woodland of the Necropolis, you can get big damage reduction at low health. You're looking at things like Hold Your Ground, giving you more stamina. You can do this Superior Tactics, giving you more crit, which is not fantastic. Or you do Built for War when you're above 80% health. You can basically gain strength. And then at the bottom with Battlefield Presence, you get increasing damage and healing done and reducing damage taken by up to 3%. So Draven is more for like, is a pure defensive option for the most part, which unless you're just really not playing well, he's not really going to be useful. So I'd go with either Theotar or Nadja. They're both about equal. Just depends on what you want to try and chase. You want to chase potential strong 4-hour party T favor with good mastery, good health bonuses, get your herbs if you want them, with things like Token of Appreciation or Wasteland Proprietary. Basically, when you're swarming Mist, you gain versatility, and you give versatility to your party members, so some value there. Whereas with Nadja, you can do things like Dauntless Duelist and single target. You can do Exacting Preparation for AoE, getting extra effects on Fallen Crusader rune, never a bad idea. And then at the bottom, of course, getting Fatal Flaw, giving you more versatility once Thrill Seeker and Euphoria end. So there's value in both. And then so that's kind of where you're at for the Covenant options. Like I said, Necrolord and all 4 are really good. I'd probably stay away from Venthyr if you can, unless you just have to be the Venthyr in your group. So what conduits do you use? So since I've got all conduits unlocked here, I'm using a many for now just because I was messing around with it. So for potency conduits, you want to look into Withering Plague. Basically, when your enemies have Blood Plague on them, which you should be using pretty early on in a fight, Heartstrike does more damage. Heartstrike is the bulk of your damage, so anything that improves Heartstrike's damage is a good thing. Some people will run Debilitating Malady. I don't see a ton of use in it personally. I don't think it's all that good. Adaptive Armor Fragment is good. Healed by another player, you gain more strength. More strength is never a bad thing. And then for the most part, your Covenant Conduit is going to be useful. Here it's A-Bomb Limb does more damage. Withering Ground does more damage on Death and Decay / Death's Due. Shackle Unworthy doing more. Like, the Covenant Conduit's always a safe choice. It's kind of a second potency conduit. For Endurance Conduits, Meat Shield is always good. Gives you more Dancing Rune Weapon uptime, which with all the other synergies, heck yeah. And then your parries also give you more maximum health. In my case, at 252 Conduit, it's going to be 7.2% health on top of things like Vampiric Blood, things like that. You just, again, can get a very large health pool. And then you want to use Condensed Animosphere. It's not bad. Basically, you heal for a little bit of health. Again, goes into the sustained. The other ones here that are, I think, niche use. Blood Bond, not very good. You don't really use Rune Tap ever unless you're just absolutely screwed on cooldowns. So Blood Bond, not very good. Insatiable Appetite can be okay if you really want to focus in on Death Strike. It can work in single target situations. Or really hard hitting bosses. So think Sire Denathrius, who was a really hard hitting boss. That's going to allow you to just get even more healing off of your Death Strike. But you can see it's 1.7%. It's just not very good. Reinforced Shell does give you bigger AMZ with a longer duration. With the Absorb, it's a little bit different now. This is kind of weakened a little bit, but the bigger radius that does allow for DPS healers, melee, whatever the case may be, to get into the thing a little bit earlier and get out a little bit earlier. Hardened Bones is also not bad. When you Lichborn, you can take damage. You reduce damage. Basically gives you another DR cooldown to go on top of something like Icebound Fortitude, which gives you 30%. You have Dancing Rune Weapon, which gives you a 40% parry chance base plus strength. You have AMS, which is a Absorb. You have Rune Tap, which gives you 10. I think it's 20% for 4 seconds. So it's there. And then Lichborn can also give you a DR. So you can see there's just a lot going into the conduit side. All right, now let's talk about the rotation. So the rotation for Blood DK, I'm going to use the kind of a standard assume build with Tombstone, Blood Tap, and I'll use Bone Storm as well. This build here is what I'm going to be running off of. So basically what you want to do when you are for single target, let's just grab this immovable champion. We'll just deal with him. So basically what you want to do is when you're going in on pull, if you're not being like shrouded right onto the feet of the boss, basically if you're running in on pull, you can use something like Death's Caress just to get Blood Plague out on it. And then you want to use Dancing Rune Weapon once you get into, once you get into flame. So you Dancing Rune Weapon, then you Marrow Strike once, and then Heart Strike, and just build this up. As you can see, we're there, and then you want to Bone Storm, hop Brutal Grasp, Death and Decay, just to give you if you're in a swarm. And then you want to use things like your Summon Undead on cooldown. You can see I'm at 10 charges, so we can pop that, get back up, You can see here you get the blood shield. I'm up to 10,000 here, and basically you just heart strike on cooldown, maintain your bone shield charges. You can see right now I'm at 10, just going back up here to Marrow Ren. Blood plague on cooldown to keep your plague up and things of that nature. So very, very straightforward. Basically maintain above 5 charges of bone shield because of your passive ossuary, which gives you reduced death strike cost above 5 runic power, or 5 bone shield charges. So keep above 5 bone shield charges. Death and Decay only on Crimson Scourge procs. And then Heart Strike to spend the rest of your runes. Blood Tap to keep your runes up. Tombstone on cooldown. Blood Tap basically when you're low runes. Blood Boil on cooldown. Use it often. That's the basis of it. Use things like Raise Dead on cooldown. Bone Storm when you have either multiple targets or you're sitting at high runic power and you just have it available in a single target, like boss in MDI situation. And then your Covenant abilities on cooldown. Shackle Unworthy, Swarming Mist, and A-Bomb's Limb on cooldown. And then Death and Decay, or excuse me, Death's Due because of the bonus. Death's Due is a little bit different. You know, I said don't use Death and Decay unless you get Crimson Scourge procs. With Death's Due, you want to use it on cooldown so you're maximizing your strength bonuses. That's pretty much it. AoE is pretty much the same thing because of all your natural and passive cleave. So overall, Blood Decay does tend to be a little bit tricky for folks that are brand new to tanking because of the yo-yoing, so to speak, of your health pool. Death Strike, the big thing to remember about Death Strike is that it basically heals 25% of all the damage that you've taken in the last 5 seconds. So a lot of people think you just burn it anytime you have enough to Death Strike. That's not the case. When you take a big hit, you want to have RP available so that you can Death Strike back up. Heals you for a maximum 70% of your health. So you have to kind of know damage patterns a little bit in order to effectively maximize Death Strike itself. So that requires a little bit of encounter knowledge and kind of knowing like what your own abilities are and how effective are you going to be at mitigating as much damage as possible through your plethora of defensive cooldowns, and things of that nature. So once you get used to it though, Blood Decay is a lot of fun. I definitely recommend that if you're into tanking at all and you want to try something that is maybe it has a little bit of a steeper learning curve, but is very, very rewarding to play Blood Decay. So that's the end of this video, guys. I appreciate you sticking around with it on me. Let's see, how long am I on this video? 38 minutes. Holy shit, I'm so sorry. So I'm just gonna cut this off here, guys. I'll be working on Frost and Unholy DKs next. I don't know which one's coming next. I'll try to get that out next week. So until then, I hope you all stay safe. I hope you're all getting vaccinated, boosters, being safe, having fun, and I'll see you all in the next video.